Today's episode we're going to talk about finding a tenant. In the last couple episodes we talked about finding a for sale by owner, how to go about buying one. Then we talked about hiring contractors to get the house all spruced up and ready for either sale or to lease it out. This episode we're going to assume that we're going to lease the house out, and we're going to tell you how to find a tenant, how to protect yourself, and in the event that you have a problem, how to get rid of the tenant. The first things I think you need to recall, or need to understand rather, is that not all tenants are alike. It's hard to judge them. You look at them, you might think, well, geez, he drives a nice car and they've got nice clothes and they're going to be these ideal tenants. It's never the case. It's just kind of a crapshoot. But here's some of the things you can do. When you're advertising your house, you can advertise it obviously in the newspaper, or you can in your church bulletin, or you can just put words out to friends. Typically, you're going to get the best tenant when you can do it through word of mouth, through your friendships. Once you get into a situation where you think you've identified a tenant, you're going to want to pull their credit. Now, there's all kinds of free credit report services, especially online right now, where all you have to do is get the person to autograph an okay, and then you can go ahead and pull their credit. Verify their employment is important as well. You're going to want to verify their employment with the current employer and with some past employers. Try to find out what kind of people they are.
Not only that, but don't forget to get a reference and actually call the reference and find out if the person is really who they say they are, do what they say they do, and are going to be the type of person that you also want in the home. Especially in this digital age, you might decide to go ahead and put something on a website, or there are several websites. I won't promote them for them, but you probably know what they are on the internet, where you can put up a free ad and get someone who calls you, and you have no idea who they are. You have to do at least a little bit of legwork, because remember, this is protecting your investment, finding out who you're going to put into the home.
That's right. Don't forget to call the last landlord. Last landlords will tell you pretty much exactly how it went. If you can go the extra mile and stop by the place that they live right now. Typically what we would do, I owned a bunch of houses and I would go get tenants. And what I would do is I would have them fill out applications. I would never take a tenant the first one that walked in the door. I'd take some applications, I'd meet the people, I'd try to get a feel for who they are, want to know if they have a dog or a cat. You want to have those type of things in the lease. No pets allowed, certain pets allowed. And if you can, stop by their house unannounced. Ring the doorbell. When they open the door, you're going to look inside and you're going to see whether it's a pigsty or it's actually kept up pretty nice. That's going to give you an indication of how they're going to treat your home.
At the same time, though, I hate to raise the specter, but watch how you're doing the things you do. Do not discriminate. I can't say this enough. One of the things that occurs is if you bring someone into the home that you're leasing to, and then whatever they do, they breach the lease. One of the defenses to being evicted from a home is discrimination. So you don't want to do things at the outset or during the life of the lease that would make it look like you're discriminating. Remember, you're protecting an investment. When you're making an investment, you're not taking into account the things that could be decidedly discriminatory.
That's right. Just try to be fair to everybody, but at the same time you want to cover your butt. So here's a couple of things you need to think of. When you're writing the lease, you have to identify the start date and the end date. Those are two clear things. How much is it going to cost for the monthly rent? You want to make sure that your monthly rental obviously is either covering the mortgage payment or darn close. You don't want to get into a losing proposition. Typically you're going to ask for cleaning deposits, first and lasts, maybe a security deposit. One of the best things you can do while you're getting the lease in place and the deposits and the agreement done is videotape the property. Either if you don't have a video camera, go out and buy a disposable camera and take a bazillion pictures of it, so that you know that when they leave, that place needs to be in the same condition, and the contract needs to say that. You don't want them to go in there, ruin your carpet, have dogs and cats running all over the place, tear it apart, and then vacate and say, well, you never said we had to do anything, in terms of keeping it in the same condition that we received it.
Now, sooner or later, when you have a lease and you have renters, you're going to end up in a situation where there's going to be litigation. You're going to have a holdover tenant or a tenant that is not paying the rent. So you want to make sure that you have provisions in the lease for that. You want to make sure that you got your first month's rent, you want to make sure that you got your appropriate deposits, and you want to make sure you built in a provision for attorney's fees if the matter turns over litigation. And if possible, maybe throw in an arbitration clause as well if there are other disputes that aren't considered a breach of the lease. And if there is a breach of the lease, there's different things you can do with regards to unlawful detainer specific to Nevada. I also practice in California. California has a little bit of different rules, but other than doing it yourself, if you build an attorney's fees clause, there's absolutely no reason for you to try to figure it out on your own. Call a professional and make sure you get your house back as quickly as possible.
Nevada's pretty good in terms of having some self-help remedies where it comes to getting rid of the tenants after they're holding over. But they don't always work because oftentimes people don't understand notice provisions. A landlord will go and file a 5-day notice to pay or quit, or a 3-day, and not show up, not know what to do, not know what the next step is. Contact an attorney, whether it's us or somebody else. You're better off doing it right the first time. Your primary goal is to get that tenant out and get a new tenant in and stop the bleeding. You don't want to keep losing money.
Also, not to cut you off, but if you're gonna rent out your property, make sure you have a good lease. Have it reviewed by attorney. We can do that very easily. Many attorneys can. Don't try to go it alone, because sometimes if you write the lease yourself and you write a bad lease, sometimes we can't fix it.
That's right. Not only okay, so now you've got a lease. You've been introduced to some of the issues in terms of having the tenant in the property, making sure that you photograph the property. You want to have an inventory on the back of that lease, have Exhibit A, inventory, and that's going to show the refrigerator, the washer, the dryer, anything that they might walk off with. Once you have those things in place, you're miles ahead of the game, and you should be okay.
Remember, an ounce of prevention prevents
a pound of cure.
Exactly.
Thanks again for watching.
See you next week.